Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Amber from Amber Reads Romance, and today I'm going to be doing some of my kind of like a monthly wrap up, but for November reads of 2022. I just started on booktube in January of 23, so I kind of wanted to do a couple of my last month's wrap-ups to kind of give you an idea on like the kind of books that I'm reading and give you some recommendations on those. So today's video is going to be November, my reads from November. I read about 16 books, I believe, so I'm going to try and make it quicker. Hopefully I don't ramble too long, and we'll just go ahead and dive in to my November reads. Okay, so the first book that I read was Birdie's Biker by Misty Walker, and this is a motorcycle MC club romance. Unfortunately, this one just didn't really work for me. I love MC romance, so the language usually isn't an issue for me, but the amount of times the hero calls Birdie bitch and the way he talks to her just really wasn't doing it for me. So we have Loki and Bridget, and then he calls her Birdie. And basically her father is in a really bad situation where it's dangerous for her. There's like a break-in into his house, so she could have been taken and hurt, and so he's very worried about her. So he makes a deal with these bikers, and he also wants for help, and then he also wants them to watch Birdie and be kind of like a bodyguard. And they're not really about this, but this is a good pay for them, so they end up doing it. And she kind of comes in. She's not about this MC rules or the way they talk to their women, which I appreciated. But she's not really following the rules, and he ends up, kind of, they have a contentious relationship at the beginning. I just didn't really feel their connection. I felt like he went from not wanting a relationship at all, never wanting a relationship, to all of a sudden being all in with her. Then there was this whole aspect of when she was acting out and not following the rules or staying safe. He literally put her in a cage, like a dog cage, while he was gone, or locked her up, and brought a woman back one time while she's literally in the cage, and I did not like that. And then what was weird is she really ended up using the cage as like a comfort thing, which I found weird. It kind of reminded me of degradation almost, even though he wasn't about her being in the cage later, she was. And no kink shaming here. It didn't really work for me, and I didn't really buy into this couple. However, I do want to continue with the series because the other biker, Rock, was like really interesting to me, and I wanted to read his book. I just haven't got back to the series yet because I'm reading a lot of series. So I gave this one 3.5 stars. Not my favorite MC romance. The next book that I read was for the fanfic readathon that they were doing on YouTube, on booktube, and that was Contradictions by Ampersand. I never know if I say that right, so I do apologize if I totally messed that up. But basically this is Draco Hermione fanfic. We got Dom-Sub relationship. I've talked about this in my other video, my top 22 reads of 2022. So if you haven't seen that video, go into more detail on it there. But basically, it's like she's not getting off, not getting sexually, fulfilled. So she goes to a club to do kind of like this Dom-Sub thing. She ends up doing a glamour, hiding her appearance, going in blindfolded, so she doesn't see who it is. And he gets her off, bangs her, gets her off. And then her glamour fades, so it's Draco, and he sees it's Hermione. She freaks out, flees, and then he finds her the next day at work and basically kind of tells her, you can't do that. We have to do aftercare. It's really important to do aftercare in this Dom-Sub relationship. They end up continuing this Dom-Sub, and it's very sexy. Draco's really dreamy. He does a lot of praise, which I love. I love praise. That's what I discovered this last year, is I love the praise kink. And Draco was hot in this book. It does have another plotline going on, so it's a good read. And I haven't read fanfic before, so I really enjoyed this experience. I gave this 5 stars. Sorry. Okay, so the next book I have is Flawless by Elsie Silver. This is the first book in her most recent series. And I really did enjoy this, although I didn't love it as much as I loved the second book, but I still gave it 5 stars. So we have Rhett and Summer, and he's in the rodeo. He's a big rodeo star, and he kind of got in hot water because he said he didn't like milk, but that's one of his main sponsors. So basically her dad has her come in and kind of be like the PR and a babysitter for him, which he's not happy about. So she ends up going to live with him on like their ranch, and she meets his dad and his brother, and it's kind of a forced proximity thing. She travels with him on the road to make sure he's not like sleeping around, getting into trouble. And so it's kind of like this, at first he's kind of a dick and this whatever, but it's not like a hate to love or anything. It's not enemies. But it builds, and it's got great chemistry. Elsie Silver's writing is really easy to read. You dive right into the book. But I gotta say, I was already more interested in Cade in this book, and he's the hero from the second book. So, but it's still a really good read. I recommend reading it first before reading the second book in the series. Again, that was 5 stars. The next book I read because I wanted to get more into Tiffany Roberts' backlist a little bit. I read her Spider's Mate series with, Catan, and it was one of my favorite series of last year that I read. I never thought I would enjoy a book with the spider, or Vrix as they're called, but I did, so I wanted to dive in. This book is actually available on any place. If you do have that, it's on there. And it's called Treasure of the Abyss. And this is Tiffany Roberts, and it's the first book in the Kraken series. So that's what it is. It's a romance between a Kraken and a human woman. We have Macy and Jax the Wanderer. And Macy loved the sea, but something tragic happened when she was younger, so she's basically not been going into the ocean and been afraid to and guilty and all that stuff. So she ends up going sailing with this guy that she thinks might lead to being like her fiance or her intended, or whatever they called it in that book, I forgot. And the storm capsizes it, and she gets rescued by Jax, and he kind of takes her to his hidden like cave and keeps her, and he's like, well, you're mine now, like I can't have you telling anybody about us or where we are. And so she's kind of stuck with him. It doesn't feel totally captor, kind of thing, because she wasn't really happy in her other life, that she does miss her friends. And so this is beautiful, like, build to their relationship. I thought I wasn't going to be able to handle the tentacle stuff, but I actually really loved it. It was great. The sex scenes were spicy. So it was a really fast, enjoyable read, and I gave this one 4 stars. So the next book was a quick novella that I read. Like to give those palate cleansers once in a while in between books. And it was from Cassie Mint. It's called Take Me Home. It was okay. I mean, it's hard to rate novellas because they don't really have that room to build like a regular novel would. But this was kind of low for me. Cassie Mint hits or misses for me, and this one just was kind of like, eh. We have Josie and Everett. This is her ex-boyfriend's uncle. She always had a crush on him. She left town hoping to become like a star and have a career and all that. Comes back with like nothing, nowhere to go. She ends up going to his place and like kind of crashing on the property. He finds her. She stays with him, and it goes from there as it usually does. It just didn't really hit it for me. And the sex scenes were just kind of like whatever. So I gave this one 3 stars. The next book I read was Painted Scars by Neva Altaj. I'm sorry, I forgot her last name. Let me see. I think it's Altaj. I hope I said that right. I'm sorry. So this is a mafia series. This is book 1. And it's with the Russian mafia, so the Bratva. And this book is Roman and Nina. He's the Pakan of the Russian Bratva, and he has an arranged marriage. Now, he had a big injury happen where now he's in a wheelchair. So it does have this great representation for, disability representation and stuff in this book. And him being the head of a mafia, not wanting to look weak, and seeing, he needs to always show that power. And so he has a lot of hang-ups about the fact that he's in this wheelchair. So I really did enjoy that aspect of it. And then we have Nina, and he has this arranged marriage with her, and she's kind of good at like putting on different personalities or facades depending on the situation. And I mean, it was good. I expected more from it, but this was the first book I ever read from this author, and I thought it was decent. The sex scenes were good, although I wanted more. It is a pretty brief, pretty quick book, so I mean, that could be it too. But I did end up giving it 4 stars because I thought it was a good intro to the series, and I did want to read more. The next book I read was Never Seduce a Scot by Maya Banks. I need to start reading more historical. I tend to only read like dark romance a lot, or mafia, so I'm trying to get in there and read more historical because I loved this book. It was my first book by Maya Banks, and I thought it was great. I also listened to this on AnyPlay, so you can get that there if you're looking. This is Graham and Evelyn. Evelyn is deaf, but she can read people's lips. She's got this amazing family. Like, I love it when like the family backs up the heroine. It's got that disability rep in here, and they're so protective over her. But they don't really understand what the issue is, like that she's actually deaf, because she had like an accident when she was younger. And so they worried like she's not completely all there. And so that may kind of upset people when they're reading this book. But basically, it's an arranged marriage between rival families. This is book 1 in the Montgomery and Armstrongs. And I really loved it. Graham ends up having this deep, gravelly voice that she can kind of hear. So she can kind of hear him. She still has to read lips and all that stuff. But it's this beautiful relationship between them. Even though their families like hate each other, they're rivals, they're forced into this marriage by the king. He's like, you know, you guys got to put this to bed. You have to, so you guys are going to get married. So when she goes there, though, she's like hated by the people because of her family. So that's really hard to read, and how she's bullied and treated. I did love her relationship with his sister, and so I'm looking forward to reading more of this series. I thought it was it's like a very low angst, beautiful kind of historical romance, and I thought it was a great time. It was pretty spicy for historical romance too, so I really enjoyed that, because I always tend to think historicals are going to be kind of low on spice, which a lot of them are. But this was my first by the author, so I didn't really know what to expect, and I absolutely loved it. 5 stars. The next book I read, I was continuing this Savage U series by Jay Wolfe. This is Soft Like Thunder. This is between Theo and Helen. You saw Helen in the high school series, so there was a previous series, I think it's Savage Crew, and she was seen in that. She's kind of like this badass, you know, tough chick, skater chick that she was a side character, and I really liked her. I just didn't really like this book that much. She was just that over the top, I'm a badass, oh look at me, I'm a skater chick, I'm selling drugs, and I'm so tough with like my bat, and it just got on my nerves. It was just a little too in your face, I'm badass, you know. So I didn't really like it. She's dealing drugs to get by, she's a stripper, which I don't judge that at all. It just wasn't my favorite to read in a heroine. And then Theo's kind of like this golden child that seems like he's got everything, even though his home life is a little bit harder than people actually know with his relationship with his family. They end up getting into this relationship, and she's hiding the fact that she's really a stripper and what she's doing. So when he finds out, lo and behold, guess what? Third act breakup, and it's just dumb to me. So I didn't really like this book, but I was keeping with the series because I did want to continue. And I'm glad I did, because not the next book, but the book after, Sweet Like Poison, was one of my favorite books last year. So not my favorite in the series, but it's still, you know, good to read this series. I gave this 3.5 stars. Okay, so my next book is King by T.M. Fraser. I listened to this on AnyPlay as well. This is between King and Doe. It's an MC romance as well. He was in prison for a while, just got out, and he ends up going to, you know, they're having a party for him. And Doe has actually lost her memory, so she has no idea who she is. That's not her real name. They just call her Doe for Jane Doe. and she's been living on the streets, going from place to place, has nothing to like, she's really struggling. And so her friend tells her, oh, we can basically be like side bitches, like club whores, and they'll take care of us. So she takes her to this MC party so that she can get with a guy and then become one of his bitches, and then she will be taken care of. So that's why she's there. She's pretty scared about it, but she does it because she's got nothing else. And so she goes to the party. They end up saying, oh, I'm going to send you up to King. They send her up to him, and he's like, no, I don't want anything to do with you. She looked very young and innocent, and he was just like, no, I'm here to like have a rough sex and don't want to do that with this girl. Ends up happening where like her friend that she was with that night tries stealing from King and like jumps out the window with money and everything. And so she's still there, and they basically keep her. So he keeps her hostage, like, and basically it's a captor-captive thing. And then it's their relationship from there. I really did like this first book. It's a duet. The first book was good. King was super alpha, super possessive, super asshole. I do love my, alpha holes. So I did enjoy it. It does leave like, I think a little bit of a cliffhanger. It's hard to remember. It was a while ago. But so you do have to read the second book to finish. And I gave this first book 4 stars. The next book I read was Princess by Claire Kent. And this is the second book in the Kindled series. I read Last Light last year, and I absolutely loved it. That was a standalone. And then she created this series. It's kind of like novellas within that same world. In this, you have Grant and Olivia. Grant is kind of like a bodyguard. She was like this big, rich, powerful man's daughter, and Grant is sent to go pick her up at the school when everything's going down because it's a post-apocalyptic event, like this asteroid hits and all this stuff. So this rich guy had this bunker, paying millions of dollars to be able to have this for end times or bad situations. This bodyguard comes, picks her up, takes her there. So they end up living in this bunker for years. Her dad dies, so it's just her, and he's kind of like looking out for her. She doesn't think he really even likes her. So it's this very slow build because it's a lot of years passing within this book. I did like it, but I was getting really tired of the heroine not believing the hero when he's into her. Like, it's like, get a self-esteem. He's obviously into you. She had a lot of self-doubt. So that kind of bugged me. I did wish she had a higher self-esteem or just not be so naive too. But it is, she was young. Also, it's a big age gap too, obviously, because she was like in high school when he like had to come pick her up. So they've known each other for years. And so I did enjoy that. It did annoy me that her trying to find out if he had real feelings was by making him jealous. And it's just like, come on, like, grow up. But I gave this one 4 stars still because it still was an enjoyable read. And I really enjoyed this series. Next, I read the end of the duet from King. So I read Tyrant from T.M. Fraser. And I didn't like it. It was not great conclusion. It was so over the top. The storylines, the plot lines, the hidden identities of her finding out who she really is, because you find out who she is at the end of the book. King basically knew who she was and didn't tell her. So there's like that betrayal aspect. Her family's freaking piece of work. And then finding out who the Tyrant is, like he's like the bad guy, and finding out what really happened to her to make her injured and lose her memory. It was over the top and it was just a little much. I mean, I can read over the top things, but this just it was just ridiculous. And I mean, I saw that who it was coming a million miles away, so it wasn't really that great. I gave this one 3 stars. Okay, so the next book I read was What Was Meant to Be by QB Tyler. I love QB Tyler. I love Taboo. I read all her books. This just didn't work for me, and a lot of people love this book. I just don't get it. This is got all the tropes that I would want to read. So you got age gap, dad's best friend, he's godfather, second chance, forbidden romance, all of that in this book, like packed into this book. But it just didn't work for me. So we have Jacob, or JP, and Whitney. And basically, like, he was her dad's best friend, kind of like her godfather, or her actual godfather growing up. And they basically had this affair. I can't remember how old she was, but it was inappropriate. And then for a couple years, and then he ends up breaking up with her and moving to get away from her because he feels bad and thinks that he shouldn't be with her. And so she was devastated after that. But now she's getting married, and it's been a couple years, and he gets the wedding invitation, or finds out about the wedding or whatever. And he loses it and is like, no way is this guy marrying my woman, and then goes back to get her back. So the reasons this didn't completely work for me was, like, they were together so fast, and we didn't get to really see the build of them falling for each other the first time. I wanted that, I didn't want, like, years later now, like, because it's like all of a sudden, bam, they're in love. They've always loved each other. I didn't feel it. Like, I didn't feel that connection. I didn't feel the chemistry. It was super fast. She's getting married, so there's, like, the cheating aspect. I don't know why you can't just end things with your fiance when the love of your life is coming back into the picture. And then the sex was just kind of boring to me. Even though it was, like, spicy and usual QB Tyler thing, I just wasn't feeling their connection. This just fell really flat to me, and it just felt like we shoved a bunch of taboo things in there, but we didn't see the growth of their relationship. It was like they were already in love, and he came back into the picture, and he didn't have to really grovel or work hard to get her back, to me at least. So I gave this 3 stars, which is kind of shocking because I see everybody else, like, giving it 5 stars, but it just didn't live up to the potential or the hype that I thought it should have been for a QB Tyler book. Okay, the next book I read was Undertow by Sam Mariano, one of my favorite authors. And this is part of the Coastal Elite series. This is book 2. This follows Hayden and Gemma. Basically, it's in the Coastal Elites, but has nothing, which is tied to Even If It Hurts. But I don't really see any connection to those characters, except I think this may have been Dare's lawyer, but I might completely be wrong. Like, I think Hayden was his lawyer. I'm not sure, though. I can't remember. So basically what this is Gemma has a teenage daughter in high school, and she's living in this neighborhood that she got a really good deal on, and her neighbors are kind of harassing her, wanting her to get rid of her place because they don't think she's up to their area, and they want other people to move in there. So they're kind of harassing her, crossing the line, and she's been dealing with it for a while, and finally she's done with it, and she wants to take action. So she asks her daughter, because her daughter goes to this really, like, fancy, richer school that she gets to go to, if she knows anybody, like any of the kids that have lawyers or something as a parent. And she does tell her, so-and-so, his dad's a really badass lawyer. This so happens to be her daughter's bully. He's been bullying and torturing her for years. And so she feels uncomfortable, but she needs a lawyer. So she ends up going there. She goes to see him, like, right after. She's a dance instructor. So she's, like, in this belly dancing gear. So he thinks she's, like, there for him. And so it's that kind of, like, funny interaction. And then she kind of tells the situation. He's like, well, you can't afford me. Like, you can't afford how much I'm going to charge you for that. But he is interested in her, wants to date her. And so he basically pursues her in normal Sam Mariano men fashion, where he's a little pushy, gonna get what he wants, and he's gonna talk her into it. He was actually a lot sweeter than other Sam Mariano heroes. So this is kind of a novella. This is a novella length too, so it's shorter. But it was really fun, like, spicy read. And it's very fast, so I wish it would have been a full-length book. His wife had a mysterious death, so I'm wondering if that's going to come play into later books, because I'm kind of wondering if she's even dead, It's this really weird thing. And then his son is this out-of-control bully that he's literally like, if you don't, because they're going to end up together, they're going to live together. So then the next book is going to be their kids, and they're, like, going to be in this forced proximity situation. So I can't wait for that book. But his dad is like, if you don't get your shit in gear and treat them right, you can leave, to his own son. which I thought was crazy. But I love this book. It was 4 stars. It kind of docked the 5 stars because it was rushed and I wanted more. But, you know, it is what Sam intended, I believe. So it's still a great book. The next book I read was The Bully by Sophie Lark. This is one of my top 2 reads of 2022. I go into detail on that in that video again. So this is between Dean and Kat. You really need to read the Brutal Birthright series and then read Ivan and Snow, which are part of an Underground series from previous, and then get to The Bully. You read the Kingmakers to get to The Bully. So you need to read these books first. You don't have to read Ivan and Snow, but it makes it better because Snow does end up showing up in this book, and he plays an important role in Dean's life. So this is between Dean and Kat. Dean is like the villain of the storyline in Kingmakers. He's the son of in Heavy Crown, the heroine in this, her twin brother. I believe it's her twin. He gets badly disfigured. Bad things happen in that book. A lot of fallout. And so that's his dad. And his dad, they live in Russia. They're part of the Russian mob. His dad is like a hermit, neglectful, doesn't treat him right. He's a very angry person. So Dean feels a lot of bitterness, and he's angry, and he's this broken boy over not being loved and how his cousin has the life. You know, and his life is shit. So he does start out like as the villain in this, and this is his redemption arc, and it's such an amazing book. He sees Kat do something in the previous book that she shouldn't do, and there's huge ramifications at the Kingmakers if anybody finds out. The Kingmakers is this school. It's kind of like Hogwarts for the mafia. So they send all their kids to this school, and they have different factions. You know, like the enforcers, the spies, the heirs, which are like, you know, they're going to take over the mafia in their home, you know, in their hometowns or whatever. So it's really interesting. It's got that Hogwarts vibe. Dean is very much a Draco Malfoy. It's a fantastic book. So he basically tells Kat, I own you. You have to do what I want. And he's going to own her for the year. He ends up just kind of bullying her, making her do shit she doesn't want to do. And she has no choice. She has to do it. Her life's on the line. And so eventually he's kind of getting attracted to her, and he decides, I want to do more. How about for like, I believe it's a month. You do whatever I want. And I mean, whatever I want. So they meet in like the bell tower, and they start like having sex, and the sex between them is amazing. He sees her like nobody else does. Everyone underestimates her. But Dean and her have this amazing connection. Dean just breaks your heart. I love him. The relationship Snow teaches at the school, and he's a fighter, and Dean is a fighter too. And they have this amazing mentor relationship, and Snow's like the only man who's ever gotten involved that's trying to help Dean. So I feel like it's just so beautiful. So this is one of my 6-star reads. I love this book. I mean, again, it doesn't mean as much to you until you read all the other books. Unfortunately, there's a lot of work to do before you can really love this book, but it is one of my favorite books. Sophie Lark is one of my favorite authors, and it's just such a great series. Okay, so the next book I have is the second book, and it was The Chestnut Springs, which is from Elsie Silver, and it's Heartless. So this is the second book in that Chestnut Springs series. Heartless is the book that I was referencing earlier that is way better than the first book, even though the first book is great as well. So this is between Kate and Willa. Kate is a rancher. I've talked about this book a lot, so if you've seen it in another video, I'm sorry. I'll try to be brief. But this was one of my 6-star reads from 2022. This and Bully were like my top 2 favorites. So Kate is like the brother from the first, Rhett's brother from the first book, and he like runs the ranch, has the weight of the whole ranch on his shoulders, has given things up in his life to do this. He's a single father, amazing father, and he wants somebody to watch his kids, so it's not just forcing it on his dad. So he needs a nanny. So the heroine from the first book, Her best friend is Willa, and she offers her to be the nanny because he's having a really hard time finding one that's not trying to get with him because he's the hot catch of the town. And so she becomes the nanny and didn't have any experience, but she hits it off with his son immediately, and they have this amazing relationship. The kid stuff is done right in this book. This book is so easy to read. It's this slow build. They have this amazing meet cute and then like this insane chemistry, but trying not to be together or, you know, push boundaries. Kate is super grumpy and he has a reason to be that way. But once they finally start getting together, it's so sexy. Like, Kate is a dirty talker and I love it. This book was hot. It was beautiful. It had the small town ranch cowboy vibes, which was really big this last year. And I loved their romance. I mean, like, it's beautiful. And there isn't this annoying third act breakup. It's like something that's, you know, I don't want to give away. But just know that, like, you're not going to be pissed or annoyed with the typical third act breakup. Kate is like top book boyfriend material. And it was one of my favorite reads of that month. And then the last book I read was Broken Fighter by Maggie Cole. So this is the second book in the Mafia Wars, and it didn't really work for me. I love the first book, and I still need to read this series. It's between Boris and Nora, and it's like Nora's family is Irish, and they're kind of like friends, like her brother's best friends with Boris, so they all kind of grew up together. They've always been in love with each other, but I don't know. It just was like, she really annoyed me. She was fighting the relationship, wishy-washy, back and forth. You come in, and again, this is my problem, is if I don't see the build of a relationship, I'm checked out. They're already been in love with each other for years. They are already in love with each other, and that's how the book starts out. So it's like, and then they're having sex, but then she's like denying the relationship and doesn't want to tell anybody, and he wants to tell everybody and she doesn't, and that just drives me nuts. And I didn't feel the chemistry. And so and the biggest thing that drove me nuts in this book was every sex scene she says Jesus, Mary, and Joseph while she's getting off. Ew. Like, that turned me off. It took me out of the book, and I go, okay, maybe it's just one time. No, like every single time. I'm like, stop saying that during sex. Say dirty talk or something, but like Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, like, ugh. So that drove me nuts for the entire book. And they have tons of sex, but like, it's like nobody knows they're together. And she's like, you're not Irish, and my family, I have to be with Irish. It's just so stupid. So unfortunately, I gave this 3 stars. I am going to continue with this series. It's just, you know how it is. I'm in between a million different series, and it takes me a while to get back to it. But it was kind of a disappointing read, so I took a break from that series for now. So anyways, those are my books from November. Thank you so much for watching. You know, I am new to booktube, so if you can like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. And you guys have a great day.